David Andrew Weeb, founder of Spark Infinity niche-based Facebook group. David, what is going on in Spark Infinity?
Spark Infinity has been growing pretty rapidly since January. We started with literally 4 or 5 members, now to well over 1,400 people, serving creatives and creators, poets, artists, visual artists, musicians, actors, actresses.
What should members of Spark Infinity be prepared for? What are the live shows about?
We like to interview people and get a sense of who they are, the kind of things they do, highlight them, and especially their amazingness, their personality, their superpowers, whatever makes them great. That's what we like to highlight in those conversations.
So how could members of Spark Infinity also benefit from Bump Global?
For one thing, there are so many amazing heart-centered founders of various niche-based Facebook groups that if you wanted to be interviewed, you could just put yourself in the middle of the storm and find all kinds of groups to be featured in and interviewed in all day long. And the other thing is, if they have the desire and the work ethic to build their own niche-based Facebook group and blow it up, that's another opportunity that's waiting for them. And I only see things growing from there.
Thank you. I don't know what that was. Welcome to Spark Infinity Office Hours, where creative journeys unfold in real time. In these intimate sessions, our hosts open their creative playbooks to share fresh discoveries, current experiments, and hard-won insights from their personal artistic paths. Whether diving into recent breakthroughs or working through creative challenges, each Office Hours session offers a raw, unfiltered look at the creative process in action. Join us to explore the practical tools, mindset shifts, and unexpected revelations that shape our ongoing artistic evolution. The quote of the day goes something like this: in reality, the only bad decision is to make no decision. Without getting too ironic, you could argue that making no decision is in itself a decision. Who said that? Michael Fisher, someone you probably haven't even heard of. Today's date is November 7th, 2025. You happen to be watching this on any other day, you are much better at time travel than I am, and you have to tell me what your secrets are. This month in Spark Infinity, we've been talking about, or we're really beginning a conversation about self-publishing and diving right into today's presentation. And this is a 4-part series. This is the first part in a 4-part series, Self-Publishing Foundations. From idea to strategy, making the decision, and planning your path. We've got a lot to unpack tonight, so let's dive right in. This image, by the way, for this slide was generated by AI, and it hallucinates some stuff. It's including some hallucinations here, but some of these factors just aren't going to apply to everyone, but it looks cool, so I included it here. Let's first explore the pros to self-publishing. You get to set your own writing and publishing schedule. I like this a lot, given that I publish a lot of books. Last year, I put out 4. This year, I put out 2. Now, I don't plan to continue on that pace, and in fact, the idea is from here on out, I hold myself back from publishing more than 1 book per year because I would like to allocate the proper time, energy, resources to promoting each book. And I don't want to give my audience whiplash, which entirely possible I have at some point. But I love this. You can be as aggressive as you want, or you can be as low-key as you want. Some people just don't want to have any kind of active deadlines in their life. And if you have a publisher, you might have deadlines that you have to meet. Although I gotta say, as someone who has self-published 13 titles, I do have deadlines for myself. In fact, usually what happens is I set it to pre-order on a specific date that I can't back out of. So I have to deliver something by then. Second is you keep more of your royalties. We'll get into the numbers a little bit later, but if you self-publish, you're going to keep more of the money, period. So this depends a lot on your ability to sell more books, though. So, I mean, you have to do some business math here, because bottom line is, even if you sell fewer books for more money, than you would with a publisher. You get less money and more books. The math can sometimes equal out. If your book has widespread sales, then the math doesn't always work out, but we'll talk more about that. Next is deciding what goes into your book. So you're not going to have editors or publishers breathing down your neck telling you what can and cannot be included. This is unfortunately one of the realities. You'll find it in the music industry. You'll find it in the publishing industry. You'll find it in all aspects of entertainment industry, in the movies and in TV shows. Although I guess we just call them shows now. They're not TV shows because no one watches TV unless you're 50 or older, right? So when you're told what you can and cannot include in your book, that's really, in many ways, it's going to affect what you can do with that book in terms of additional income or monetization. Next is the ability to create and direct readers to opt-ins and upsells. This is one of those things that I love being able to do as a self-published author, because I want to continue to build a relationship with the reader. Why wouldn't I? They went to the trouble of finding my book, looking at the description and title, deciding whether they wanted to buy the book, and they actually went and bought the book. So at that point, I should be interested in building a relationship with them. If you go with a traditional publisher, that may not be available to you. In fact, most of the time, they just direct people to a very generic website, one that's not designed to sell. It's not designed to get people to give you their emails, designed to do little more than direct people to more of their books, which they may or may not be interested in the first place. So those are the pros as I see it. Let's talk about some cons, things that might work against you, things you might not like about self-publishing. First is you have to figure everything out for yourself. The whole thing. It's not that you can't hire freelancers or experts, and we'll talk more about that in a moment, but I think most people kind of begin this process feeling a little bit overwhelmed because they're going, okay, I don't just have to figure out how to write a book, which can already be a pretty massive task, especially if it's research intensive, especially the editing phases. If you're going to be doing some editing yourself, and oftentimes it is best if you can find a second or third editor to help you, or at least a second or third pair of eyes. They can offer some valuable suggestions. But yeah, basically everything from writing the script all the way to determining the pricing of the book, it's going to be up to you. So some people don't like that. Next is deadlines don't exist unless you make them. I talked a little bit about that already. I would suggest making them, but some people, I think some people are not terribly motivated to actually get something done unless there's a looming deadline over their head or unless they have sufficient structures. Remember though, like if you're going to be a self-published author at all, you have to have some kind of structure. Even if it's just, I get up in the morning and for an hour, I write for an hour. Doesn't, without any need to meet a certain word count or without any need to accomplish a specific number of pages, you have to have structures in place. And so that could be considered a con for some people, that they have to create their own structures. Next would be reduced access to retail distribution. We'll talk more about this later. But as a self-published author, you can still distribute your book pretty widely, and we'll talk about some of the tools that enable you to happen. But there's no denying that most bookstores aren't going to carry your book. But the thing is, unless your book is kind of in the top tier of books anyway, even if it was distributed by a traditional publisher, there's a chance that it's not going to get into major bookstores. So it may not actually be a con. And then increased costs. Talked a little bit about this already or hinted at it, but like you might have to hire editors and illustrators and graphic designers and photographers to put the whole thing together. And I say may because you don't have to. And it's not like, this is not a brag. I don't intend to take everything. I don't mean to take everything on myself, but I have done this before, and I've done it enough times to be able to be the writer, the editor, the illustrator, the graphic designer, the photographer. Well, I can't really be the photographer. I've been fortunate enough that I've taken some good photos every 2 years or every 6 years or something. Like, depends, there's breaks between photo shoots, but I have enough good photos currently to use that are reflective of who and what I look like nowadays. So, I'm stockpiling some of that stuff, and you will over time, right? You might not have all that ready on your first book, but as you continue on to your second, third, fourth book, keep writing, keep practicing, doing the work of an author, doing the work of somebody who writes books, you're going to have more stuff to pull from. So that's just going to make life a lot easier. Let's talk about traditional publishing pros. I think there's three main ones as I see it. And none of these are really guaranteed, as it were, but we can talk about that. So one is that publishers may give you advances. And that means here's the amount of money we think your book is going to make, or we will owe you in terms of royalty earnings. So it's like projected royalty earnings. And the amount will vary a lot. It depends on you and the career you've built so far. It depends on your book's potential, or at least what they see as being your book's potential. And it's also going to be, or another factor is going to be the size of the publisher. So smaller publishers probably not going to give you as big of an advance, right? Next would be wider distribution, especially in retail. But again, this is something you have to think about, the fact that bookstores are kind of a dying breed. They're still out there, and there are independent bookstores and stuff like that too. I think there's even fewer of those, but you need to ask yourself how much an advantage this ultimately is. Like, if you can get into Chapters or another major book retailer, and your book is one of the first things people see, that's great. But how many books are there that are like that? Maybe 50, maybe 100 when you walk in a bookstore. Is yours going to be one of those? Absolutely no guarantees. So a wider distribution isn't always an advantage, but it still can be, depending on how it's handled. Next is credibility. So it's really kind of hard to say how much people care nowadays, because it seems like everyone and their dog has a book now. And let's face it, not all of them are great. So why would you put anything out into the world that you wouldn't at least consider like you're proud of? I don't know why you would do that, but I'm sure people do. And there are grifters out there too. But I do think there could be some credibility benefit. Like, people could be impressed by the fact that Penguin Random House worked with you, or whatever it may be. And that could lead to some other things. Speaking engagements, accolades, awards, other types of credentials that may come in handy in some way, shape, or form. I was just informed the other day that I won another award. I'm excited about that. It looks like I'll have a chance to speak in Vegas for 1 minute. But the Entrepreneurial Excellence Award, I have that's official now. I wasn't not nominated. I've won it, and that's pretty cool to see. And I love that stuff, but I also have to be realistic about, like, is that actually going to contribute to my business, or selling more books, or creating a bigger following, or any of it? And it may or may not. Traditional publishing cons. So we just went through what I would say are probably the main advantages. Also probably knowledge, right? Legal departments, all that kind of stuff could be considered a pro in the traditional publishing model. But one of the downsides would certainly be timelines. Publishers have their own publishing schedules or promotional schedules. They will execute them exactly as they see fit. They're not going to kowtow to one of their authors just because they have a really good idea, just because they sound convincing. You're probably not going to convince them to release your book on some kind of date that works for you. It's going to be a date that they deem as being the best time to release your book. So you don't really get any flexibility there. It depends on their capacity, because some publishers are going to have limited capacity or staffing, or maybe they only promote 3 new titles per month, or whatever their reasoning and strategy. They're not going to release a book when you think it should be released. They're going to release a book when it makes sense for them to release it. Next would be, or of course, one more thing about that is, it's not really a problem if you're not the type to publish that frequently. If you're perfectly fine putting out a book every 3 years, 5 years, something like that, then bottom line is you're probably okay working with a publisher because you're not releasing books more aggressively, and you're perfectly fine leaving it in the hands of the release schedule, everything in the hands of someone who at least claims to know what they're doing in terms of promotional schedules and things like that. Next is reduced control. Basically, every aspect of your book could be up for scrutiny. That includes the content. Yes, they will cut chapters, or they will ask you to rewrite chapters, or they'll remove sentences, or they'll remove paragraphs. It's all based on what the publisher determines what works for them, and your vision for your book could easily be compromised, right? It could be the simplest thing, like, oh, they want all chapters to be roughly 4,500 to 5,000 words. They want symmetry. And you might go, that's not the way I want my book to be. I want first 3 chapters to be 200 words. I want people to just sit and reflect on what they read. Then I want my 4th chapter to be 10,000 words. Now, that would be a pretty odd thing, but sometimes innovating in that way has produced surprising results in media. You're not going to have that kind of flexibility here, really. They're going to determine what the length of everything should be. And because at the end of the day, like, content is available in abundance. So they have to accomplish their promotional vision with your book, not the other way around. The publisher may even tell you to avoid adding links to your website, or opt-in offers, or affiliate links, or upsells at their discretion. They're just going to say, nope, you shouldn't include that. Maybe in some cases they don't care and they'll let you include a link or two. But I mean, that's definitely going to put a throttle on what you're going to be able to do on the back end of your book. Your book is a fantastic promotional tool. It's not a great moneymaker. And if you want to be able to generate income from your book, then you need to be able to do stuff on the back end. You need to get people to book you for speaking engagements. You need to get them to buy your course. That's how you're going to make the money. Your book is your loss leader, basically. So if you can't do that with your strategy through a publisher, it's going to limit what you can do. Of course, the upshot is that your book might sell better with a publisher and their guidance. So there's always that. You might earn more royalties. And maybe if you get in advance, you'll already know what they're expecting in terms of sales. So not such a bad thing. Next would be reduced earning potential. On the one hand, the publisher could help you sell more copies than you'd be able to sell yourself, like I've been saying. And on the other hand, they could arbitrarily limit your earning potential by telling you what you can and can't do in terms of opt-ins, upsells, speaking engagements, and other offers, which I've covered already. They also keep a larger chunk of your royalties, so these are the numbers that you need to know. Publishers will keep 85 to 90%. So if on a $10 book, you're making about $1, right? You might make a little bit more than that, but that's a number that I've heard before, and perhaps you've also heard that number before. But they're going to keep 85 to 95%. Whereas most self-publishing platforms, and I do advise using a platform, although you might maybe you have a website that's got lots of traffic, you could just sell your book through your website. Derek Severs does that. There's other people that do that. And you could choose whether or not it goes on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com or whatever else. So there are some options there. But most self-publishing solutions take around 30 to 65%. So if you're selling a book for $10, you might be able to keep anywhere from $4.50 to $7 per sale. And that's pretty much consistent with my experience versus making, like I said, $1 or $2 per sale. Let's get into some common myths. First would be you've got to get everything perfect. If you're self-publishing, you don't need perfection, really. And I think it's like, for me, it's about hitting good enough. And my whole thing about being good enough is still a high bar to hit. It is not a low bar. I am working towards I'm working towards something that I can be proud of. And I'm working towards something that I believe is the best thing I've done to this point. And the book that I'm working on right now is The Independent Career Code. That book is already looking and sounding better than anything else I've already put out there. So as I continue to get up to bat and gain practice, my books keep getting better. And I think everybody is thinking to themselves, well, I'm going to have a tainted history if I release something that's not perfect. You can remove it from store shelves. Like, there might be a few copies out there, but then it becomes a rarity. And then in some weird kind of way, it could end up being more valuable. So that's not a downside. And you don't have to get everything perfect the first time around. And we'll talk more about why that is. And basically has to do with the next myth, which is once it's out there, and there's no opportunity to edit. It's simply not true anymore. Like, this used to be a problem with publishers for sure. And it's crazy to think, but I've seen many books by known authors, or at least known experts. I don't think in many cases they even wrote their book or had much to do with writing their own books, that contain tons of spelling errors and actually aren't very good books at all. So I think a lot of publishers are perhaps counting on the fact that many people don't actually read what's inside, or they never get past the first few pages. I'm not like that. Like, once I start a book, I kind of feel inclined to finish it. That's usually my prerogative there. It doesn't mean you have to follow in my footsteps and do exactly as I say, but when I start a book, I tend to finish it. So I know a bad book when I say one. And I've read a couple of expert books that it's just really not terribly thrilled about. And it's crazy because probably they went through publishers. If you do this yourself, you can edit. You can go, like if you're using Amazon KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, which is what I use, I can go in there and I can upload a new manuscript after it's been edited. I can go in there and change the book cover. If I have a new one, I can go in there, change the title. I can change the description. I can change the keywords. I can change the categories. I can even change the pricing. You can edit. Yes, it's a lot of work, of course, but you can change what's already out there. There's no rules against it. Next, I need my first book to be a runaway success. You really don't. I mean, and we'll talk more about this, but it's testing an idea. You're experimenting. You're putting something out there to get a feel for it. You're forming a hypothesis, right? You're researching your audience. You're researching your topic. You're putting together something that your audience is going to like. And this could be nonfiction. This could be fiction. This could be poetry, whatever. But there's a certain audience, likely a niche audience, that you're trying to appeal to. So you'll form a hypothesis based on what you know about them and based on what you're writing and where there's bound to be an intersection of interest. And you put that out into the world and you test it. The problem is usually not that people aren't, the problem is not that people are publishing, it's that they're not publishing enough. They need to be testing more books, not fewer. That's how you're going to find stuff out. What most people do is they put one book out, they watch the sales or they watch the results, like do very little or nothing in terms of promotional activity. They just watch the stats. And after 6 months, they go, I guess it was a failure. And then they dwell on the fact that it was a failure for 6 months. No, that's not what you should be doing. The idea didn't resonate, didn't have resonance. Okay, I'm a marketer. You know what? Most of my ideas have no resonance whatsoever. I'm being recognized for entrepreneurial excellence, for crying out loud. I'm telling you, vast majority of my ideas, I thought they were great. Many of them. They didn't do anything in the market. Many of them did absolutely nothing in the market. Your book does not need to be a runaway success. But once you have the feedback, you adjust, you edit, you make changes. One change to the title could change everything. One change to the cover could change everything. You don't know. Okay. Next, failure is a problem. No. Failure is not a problem. It's not really failing, though. It's testing. It's experimenting. And we need to frame things that way. I'll talk more about that later, too. I'll restate the things that are important here. But failure is not a problem. We need to change our framing as artists, because artists are ultimately entrepreneurs, too. We need to think of ourselves as entrepreneurs because there is no other way. There is no other way. You're dealing with AI, you're dealing with mainstream media, you're dealing with controlled opposition and distractions, Netflix, Amazon Prime. There's too much stuff out there that's vying for people's attention. A lot of it's crap, but that doesn't mean it's not distracting people. People, you watch people's behaviors, go out in public. What do? Stare at their phones everywhere they go. They're crossing the street, they're staring at their phone. They're at the mall, they're staring at their phone. They go to get a haircut, they're staring at their phone. They're watching TikTok, for crying out loud. So failure is not a problem. Part of obscurity is the problem. But like failure, no one's paying attention, right? Public failures suck. Sure, there can be some embarrassment, but I kind of take that as part of the course. So we really need to start framing these as tests and experiments, not failures. Tweak it if it's not working. Change it if it's not working. Next, I need to give everyone and everything credit. Have a complete index. Double check my research. Create my appendices. Get it edited 4 times or 5 times or 20 times. Get 13 authors involved. Why the hell are people hiring 13 people to write songs in the music industry nowadays? I guess they're just trying to pay more people. I guess I can get behind that. But you don't need 13 people to write California Girls. Maybe not the best example. There's more modern songs. But you don't need 13 people to write that song. What the hell, man? So, no, you don't need to get everything perfect. Now, listen, I'm not encouraging you to put a low-quality book out into the world. No, like I said earlier, my standard is good enough, what would be good enough for me, but that level is when I'm proud of the work. If I'm not proud of the work, I'm not putting it out. So what I'm saying is that there are different ways of handling this. It's important to remember that everybody's work is based on someone else's. And not only is attributing something like SMART goals a really big waste of time, not going to add value to seasoned readers. We've already heard of SMART goals and we failed at them. Stop beating a damn dead horse. Bring something new to the table. Rephrase it. Rethink it. It's okay if it's the same concept, but talk about it in a new way. I don't want to hear about SMART goals. I failed at them. I don't like them. A lot of people feel that way. But I'm going to give you some ideas too. So in terms of resources, this is an approach I've taken, not with every book. Typically, or at least where I started, was I put most of the resources at the back of the book. But over time, I was like, let me just list all the relevant links at the end of the chapter. Simple. It's my own formatting. You know, this is another thing that people think they have to adhere to the formatting of the publisher. No, you don't. Where are those rules? Make your book better than theirs. Make your book more usable. Innovate. You have the opportunity. You're agile. You can make moves that they can't make because everything has to be. It's like a law in their company that everything has to be a certain way. You don't have to follow suit. Innovate. Make your book more useful. Make it better. One book that really taught me that was Content Inc. by Joe Pulizzi. Content Inc. And the author is Joe, J-O-E, Pulizzi, P-U-L-I-Z-Z-I. He did exactly this. At the end of every chapter would be the list of resources. Here's your links. You want to check my sources. You want to check additional articles. You want to check additional videos that inspire you, affiliate products, whatever it is. They were all there. And I like that. It makes your book more useful. So if the publisher is dictating the terms, but you want to be a self-published author, then innovate. Make your book better. Let's talk about the self-publishing landscape. I'm not going to do a deep dive on these tools. There are others out there. I'll list off a few and talk about them a little bit. Amazon KDP is pretty much what I use. In terms of, that's kind of my first place to go. That's where I would set up a pre-order. That's where I would set up my paperback book. That's where I would set up my hardcover book. And that's where I would set up my Audible as well. The whole shebang right there at Amazon KDP. Makes life easy for me because with all my books there, all my reports are there, All my statistics are there. Everything in one place makes life way easier. Best part about it, it's print on demand, and I don't handle that. Amazon handles that. I can buy author copies if I need them, and at wholesale pricing, not retail pricing. Retail pricing is what I set. Amazon does give me some limitations in how low or how high I can go with my book price, which understandably, they got to do what they've got to do. But I've still got quite a bit of leeway to work with. So Amazon has been really great for me. I think their print books are fantastic. I know the hardcover thing is still pretty new, but great as far as I can tell. And they even give you the ability to create audiobooks. And this is pretty much with the click of a mouse now, which is crazy, but like AI will read your books and you can put that out as your audiobook as well. Now, I think it's still best if the author reads it, and the second best is if you hire a narrator to read it. That's ideal. But Amazon handles everything else. They handle customer service. They handle chargebacks. They handle returns. I don't have to deal with any of that. My royalties are my royalties, period. It's done. It's over with. If people buy my books, I make something. If people don't buy my books, I don't make something. So I'm happy to give away 30 to 65%. When they're the ones printing, they're the ones packaging, there's the ones shipping, they're the ones fulfilling, they're the ones handling customer service. It's fantastic. Lulu, really cool service. I checked them out when I was first exploring, trying to figure out which platform would be best for me. I think I would still consider doing something with them. I haven't because I think I just found it very complex. And if I wanted to have a hardcover book and I wanted to have the jacket and all the graphics and the text on everything on it, I found it to be very, very complex and costly. So they may have a print on demand. I think they have a print on demand system. It just works very, very differently than Amazon's. I can wrap my head around Amazon's because my product is going up in their marketplace, first of all. And second of all, I'm not paying anything up front, whereas with some of these other services, you're going to be. However, Lulu is an excellent, excellent option. Plenty of independent creators use them. Ingram Spark, they offer some wholesale distribution, which is pretty cool. They give you access to bookstores and libraries. Then again, Amazon KDP, which was formerly CreateSpace, they offered something similar, that you could have expanded distribution into libraries and bookstores and things like that. So I wouldn't say that's anything unique to them. Another service that's not here, and again, I'll list off a few, but one of them is BookBaby. I have experience with BookBaby, and I use them for distribution. So when I came out with my first ebook, I did not go to Amazon, KDP, or CreateSpace right away because I just didn't know about them. So I went to BookBaby. That was something I knew, and I paid a pretty penny. Well, I don't know if it would be a pretty penny by my standards today, but back then it felt like a substantial amount of money because I was used to distributing my music, and that was never very costly. I think $10 to $30 per release or something like that. This was more like $200-300 to put my ebook out into the world. But to their credit, man, there have been advantages to having my first book everywhere because it is my best-selling book. No book has sold as many copies as my first book, The New Music Industry. And I think that is in large part because I distributed. I did expanded distribution through BookBaby. So worth considering, worth looking at. There's also one called Blurb. There's another one called Book Vault. Those are some options. You might want to look into them. We'll talk more about platforms. We'll talk more about tools, but there's a little bit of an overview of the self-publishing landscape. There are also tools that specialize in distribution like Draft2Digital. This is another one that I have experience with. I have not gotten any kind of results with Draft2Digital so far, but I do like them, and I do like what they're offering. And what they're offering is free. I'm pretty sure it's free. And it will distribute your book in all kinds of places online. And so I'm going to be using them more. I don't think all my books are listed through Draft2 Digital. Some of my latest releases are, but I'm going to continue experimenting with them and see what's possible, because I like having my books. Obviously, with the new music industry, it went well, so I like having my books in more places. Let's talk briefly about defining success on your terms, because I think this is important. Independent creators should be thinking about what success means to them, not try to adhere to someone else's idea of what that should be. So there are benchmarks for all types of books in different genres. We'll maybe talk about that in another office hours or another presentation. I do recall one thing, though, which is most business books do not sell more than 5,000 copies. There's a benchmark for you. So if you know you're writing a business book, it's like if you sell a few thousand, you're doing pretty good, man. And because most books don't sell that much if you're in that genre or category. The question that matters more to me rather than the stats, and I'm sure we'll talk more about stats, but what does success look like to you? What does success look like to you? Do you want your book to become a bestseller? Is that what you're going for? Do you want to sell 5,000 copies plus? Do you want to sell 500 copies? Some people will be completely happy with that, and especially if it was 5,000 copies in a month, decent income. Your book could be your business card at networking events. I think it's a really great way to use it, because ultimately you're not going to make tons of income off your book in most cases. You either got to have a lot of books, or you got to have a few like books that everyone knows about. Maybe for some people, just becoming a self-published, like an actual published author, is enough motivation. That could be success in itself. I hadn't even thought about that when I released my first book. Someone said it to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I guess that does make me a published author now. Cool. And from then on, I kind of had to like acknowledge and recognize as things were happening. My first book sold enough to appear as a bestseller on Amazon. And then henceforth, I was an Amazon best-selling author, right? And yeah, there's ways to game the system. Yeah, some people do. At the end of the day, though, I think there's really limited number of ways you can do that now. You got to be able to mobilize your troops, get them to buy, get them to review. It's the only way you got to have an email list, or you got to have an audience or something, or else that's just not possible. So at one point, yeah, Amazon tries to make it easy on you, like as easy as possible for you to become a best-selling author. But there's just too many releases now. There's too much competition. So they're not going to make it any easier on you than it already is. Also, it's not about what others say is possible, especially if they're writing in a different genre. They have different skill sets or backgrounds. They have access to other audiences and so on. So don't compare yourself to them, because comparison will ruin your motivation and progress. You're a different person at a different time and place in life, writing about a different topic. Don't compare yourself. You are you, and your journey is yours. Don't compare. It's pointless. I'll touch briefly on book timelines and milestones. Now, to me, this does not matter that much. I know it's crazy, but I just don't think about this much anymore. My strategy is to put a book up for pre-order at a specific date and problem solve the rest. That's it. Figure out how I'm going to deliver on time. And sometimes, I guess, compromises would have to be made. Maybe I add a little less content than I was originally planning to. That hasn't happened, but I would say like really only a little bit. Not like a lot of content. It's just like, I guess I'll skip this part. Not include it. Or at times I've gone, okay, I will release the ebook for now, but I don't have the time or resources to put together a paperback and hardcover version at the moment. So let me put that off until later. Sometimes I've done it that way. But for the most part, it's just about setting that deadline. And a pre-order is a good motivator, because you have to deliver. Amazon's not going to give you a choice in that. And if your account's not going to be in good standing if you don't. So set a pre-order and figure out how to fulfill on it. I would still say, though, that the following components are what I think about. And this should touch on most of them that you should be thinking about as well. First is the manuscript. I know people think about this in terms of how many chapters do I need? How many words do I need? I don't really think about that anymore. And you can have a great 10,000 word book and you can have an awful 80,000 word book. It's really just about what message needs to be communicated, what needs to be said, as much as what really doesn't need to be said. Both are really important. So I don't think in terms of first drafts, second drafts, third edits, and so on. And you may want to. You may want to set some dates for that. You may want to set some milestones for that. I don't think too deeply about that. I either have an idea or I don't. I'm either making progress towards making that idea or a reality, or I'm not. So I'm not going to set a pre-order unless I think I've got a pretty good idea to begin with, right? So a manuscript is done when it's done, as far as I'm concerned, and it may not even be fully done until the day of release. You submit it to Amazon, and they're going to give you a list of what they think could be potential spelling errors. Thankfully, in most cases, it's probably just links or really unusual spellings for certain things that they don't like, but they might catch a few things, and you'll go, okay, let me edit that real quick before I submit my book. Either way, the bottom line is you're going to need a manuscript, right? Otherwise you don't have a book. And you can use whatever word processor or tool you like. I've used Microsoft Word for all the books I've published so far. You can also utilize Google Docs. Even that will work. You're just going to have to export it into a format that works. And there are specialty software programs specifically for writing. And some of the top ones that I've found are Atticus, Sudo-Write, S-U-D-O-Write, and Scrivener, which is probably a popular one many people have heard of, S-C-R-I-V-E-N-E-R, Scrivener. So for me, yeah, it's determining when it's good enough instead of chasing perfection. However, you may have different thoughts. Maybe you would like to set a milestone for first draft. Perfect. Maybe you'd like to set a milestone for second draft, and first edit, and second edit, and third edit. Do it. If it motivates you, if it helps you in the process, do it. I just think what I need is a manuscript, and the manuscript's got to be good. That's my approach. I keep it simple. You're going to need a title, and you're going to need a good title, and this should be pretty obvious stuff. Should include keywords. If you're thinking in terms of business book, a fiction book should still have a compelling title of sorts, but sometimes you just never know what's going to be big. So sometimes it's like one-word titles or two-word titles. You've seen it with movies that in no way look like they could be big movies, but because of promotional budgets or because of who's in them, whoever your favorite actor or actress might be, they go big, So title's not everything, but it definitely has importance, definitely has its place in the strategy aspect of it too. Subtitle is optional, but it can be a good place to put additional keywords to help maybe identify an audience. There's different ways of using that subtitle to describe what people are going to get, or like really tease people as to what's inside of the content. There are different ways to use that subtitle worth thinking about. Next would be the description. You're going to need a description, period. It doesn't have to be long. It should be compelling, absolutely. It is oftentimes the same as what goes on the back cover. Doesn't have to be. You can innovate. You can try different strategies. I don't like writing two things necessarily, or two different things, like description for the back cover plus another description for Amazon or whatever, or wherever the book's going to be seen. So best to make it the same, or just easier to make it the same. Again, the description should be compelling. It should include relevant keywords. It should appeal to your target audience. Those are some of the basics. You're going to need categories. Amazon can help you place your book in the appropriate categories, but you probably know better than anyone where it belongs. This process can take time, but it's not difficult. So, and again, whether you're using Amazon or some other place, you'll have a list of categories to choose from. You can go through, you can check off the ones that work for you. I think it's like 5 categories or something like that. And ultimately, the platforms kind of they'll probably go by what you say, but may move your book to a more appropriate category. You need keywords. I wouldn't overthink this, but look at one of the things you can do is look at the top books in your niche and look at what words are being used in the titles, and you could try those, for example. There are other strategies. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are simple tools you can use to research this. Even Google Keyword Planner could be reasonably good. Maybe Google Trends. These are free tools you could take advantage of to figure out what keywords you might want to try. And try or test being a keyword like I talked about earlier. You'll need to figure out pricing. There will be flexibility, more flexibility or less flexibility, depending on which platform. I think Amazon certainly has limits in terms of how high the price can go and how low the price can go. I think you can have free promotions and things like that, but they're limited to a few days. It helps to use those if you need to get a bunch of downloads, which can help with getting more attention to your book and can also help achieving bestseller status. So the pricing is worth playing with or experimenting with. But generally, there's benchmarks. You can find them anywhere. Like there's recommendations in terms of top selling books are in this price range. Doesn't mean it's guaranteed to work for you, but can certainly help as a guide. One of the books that I have out there, and just to give you an example, is the Productivity, Performance, and Profits Black Book. When I wrote it, when I put it together, I called it a premium book. The reason I called it a premium book is because it includes many chapters from my other books, as well as the entirety of one of the shorter guides I wrote. So it's almost like 3 books in one. So to me, that's a premium book. I think I set the price as highest as it could possibly go in all formats, ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Why did I do that? Strategy. Because people can get that book for just the cost of shipping on my website. I wanted to drive people there to get the book through there. If they want to still buy it through the Amazon, and that's more convenient for them, go right ahead. But then I actually make something that's worth it for me. Rather earn them as a customer, have their contact information, be able to follow up with them, sell them additional offers, upsell, etc. That's why that strategy matters. So to me, that's it. Those are the elements. The thing that generally spends the longest time in development is going to be your manuscript. I feel like that might be the only thing that's worth setting milestones around. Maybe the graphic design or the cover, because that can't, depending on what you're trying to achieve, that could take a little bit longer. You might need to hire a graphic designer or whatever, so you might have a milestone around that. Everything else is just like, have this ready. And if you know in advance that you need all this, right, you can start developing it. So if you have a good idea what you want to accomplish, you could have your book cover being developed at the same time as your book, just as an example. This comes with the caveat that if you're putting together a paperback or hardcover version, you need to know page count before getting your cover design. And also, with Amazon, it's certainly the case. I would expect it. It's the same with every platform. You're going to need to know specific dimensions, and you'll probably need to design to those dimensions, whether paperback or hardcover. It'll be different sizes. So either you need to know what that means and how to work that, or you need to find a graphic designer who does understand it. Oh, there's pricing. Forgot about the slide. Okay, let's talk about the mindset shifts you need to succeed. First is, what if I fail? Versus everything is testing. I think I've said a lot about this already. So what I'm going to do is, let's talk about Tim Ferriss's The 4-Hour Workweek. He did not, so he tested multiple different titles and landed on The 4-Hour Workweek because that title was the most clicked on. And he's not the first to do this, but it is brilliant. He put together a bunch of Google ads. He tested a bunch of titles. He checked which one was most engaged and which was most clicked. And the one that was the clear winner was The 4-Hour Workweek. That's why that became the book's title. He had considered other ideas. He had other ideas. Testing, right? Knowing these things in advance helps you make decisions that are going to help you. Next, this must work versus this is an experiment. Like I talked about earlier, forming a hypothesis. It's I'm doing my homework, I'm researching my audience and topic, I'm doing the best I can right now, not later, not some version of myself that hasn't even manifested yet. I'm forming a hypothesis around what I think is going to work in the market, and then I'm putting it into the world and I'm testing it. But the only way you can test it is by actually putting it out into the world. At the very least, the very, very least, you don't need to develop a manuscript. At the very least, you need to like set up pre-orders on PayPal or something and ask for people's money. And if they give you money, make it. If they don't make you money, you don't have to make it. I've made things that I made because I wanted them to exist, not necessarily because they were going to be big money makers. God knows how many of my initiatives have not produced anything. But I didn't need everything to do something for me. I only needed 5% or whatever it is. I don't know what my success rate is. But a very, very small percentage were successes, enough of successes that stacked on each other that made it all worthwhile. Next, I'm worried about what people might think versus the greater concern is obscurity. I mean, if you don't have a book out there, you're just not an author. You're an aspiring author, but you're not an author. Do you have a book out there? Ask yourself that. If you don't have a book, you're not an author, period. You can't claim to be an author, but you can claim to be a published author if you have a book out there. So it's not what other people think. I mean, it's nice when you get praise, but if you get either way, there's typically a problem when you hear celebrity musicians, celebrity artists talk about this all the time, that if they focus too much on the praise, they go in the wrong direction. If they focus too much on the criticism, they go in the wrong direction. Basically, focusing on what other people think is unproductive. The greatest concern is that if you don't have a book out there, you don't have a book out there. So you're going to be obscure. And the fewer books you got out there, the more obscure you're going to be. Give people a chance to know you. The only way you can do that is by putting a book out there. Let's look at this one. I'm not disciplined versus I'm indulging in creative procrastination. We've talked about this on the show a couple times. Artists, even copywriters, they will sometimes start with an idea, right? So they have the idea, they're feeling pretty good about it, but they're not immediately putting pen to paper and writing it all out, or they're not immediately going to their guitar and starting to work out riffs. They're thinking about it. Then they start stewing on it. And from the outside looking in, it doesn't look productive at all. And that's another way of saying this. It's like productive procrastination. Creative procrastination, productive procrastination. This is where you're thinking. But from the outside looking in, it doesn't look like anything's happening. You could be sitting there playing a video game, right? Creatives do this all the time. You could be sitting there with the radio on or the TV on, sitting at the couch. There's a notebook by your side, but you're not actively, you're just kind of letting things come to you. You're just thinking. This is very common, and it's productive procrastination when you're aware that that's what it is. If you're not aware, you're going to get down on yourself. That's going to affect your self-esteem. You're going to feel bad, and you're not going to make progress. But if you're aware that it's productive procrastination, let me tell you something. So I was recently asked to write a screenplay for a good amount of money. And most of the development was happening in my mind. And some ideas came to me through conversation. And I started turning those ideas over in my mind for weeks, because I was supposed to deliver this basically October or November. I think I delivered it a day or two ago. The writing part only took two weeks or 3 weeks. That's it. Maybe not even that. Could have been 1.5 weeks. That's it. Because I spent it was productive procrastination. I was thinking. I was just stewing on the idea. What could happen? What could I do? And once I came to the writing, I knew what I wanted to happen. So productive procrastination. That's a better way of framing it. Just don't lose confidence while you're doing that. I'm doing this wrong versus I'll figure it out as I go. I mean, isn't that true with everything? Like, were you really down on yourself when you couldn't walk? Were you really depressed about things when, like, were you mad at yourself when you couldn't ride a bike? That's strange. That's weird. Why do you become an adult and suddenly you're so afraid of failing? You're going to figure it out as you go. Isn't that everything? Isn't that everything in life? Didn't you make up everything? Like, yeah, you might have a rational, logical justification for where and how you are now, but it's accumulation of mostly emotional decisions. You think it's logical or rational. That's not how human beings make decisions. We make emotional decisions and justify them later with logic. Look it up. That's how we do things. So why are you so down on yourself? You know, when I go and do things, I tend to make all the mistakes in the world. You know, I built every piece of furniture that's in my new suite right now. There's not a single one. I think maybe my desk. But besides my desk, there's not a single piece of furniture that didn't make a mistake somewhere. Oh, oops, that's backwards. Oops, those screws going that way. I didn't realize. I should have realized. Not a single one. I had to redo a bunch of the work. So what? I'm not a handyman, okay? Cool. But I had to build the furniture. I had to get the job done. And I did. And I learned from my mistakes, right? Next time I see that screw, I know what to do. You're going to figure it out as you go. Be okay with figuring it out as you go. And just endeavor to do better next time. Let me say more about that. What musicians should be doing, and I think I've talked about this before in another interview or another podcast. Every time they go out to play, and this was my goal, every time they go out to play and to perform, they should endeavor to be better. Doesn't necessarily stand, or isn't necessarily something that professional, established, people who are really good at what they do should observe, but people who are just beginning. Endeavor to be a little bit better every single time you go on stage. There's nothing like live performance in terms of gaining practice. You're getting practice in front of an audience. But if you don't make an effort to be better, you're going to lose an audience. That's what's going to happen. People are not going to want to come to your shows. I had a pretty good band back in the day, and people didn't even want to come to see us. So what are the chances of, if all you've got is popularity and you suck at what you do, you might get a few people out, but your music's certainly not going to reach a broader audience, is it? You kind of need a balance there. You can be popular, but you also got to be good at what you do. Or you can be good at what you do, but you also got to know some people. So I would suggest just try to be a little bit better every time. And you're going to get so good at this thing, probably by the time you do your 5th or 6th book. You might not be totally happy, and I wasn't either, with my first book, or my second book, or my third book, or my 4th book performed so poorly. It's like, I thought I was building some momentum here in the right direction. And I think I found my pacing again with my 5th book. But by the time you put 5 or 6 of these suckers out there, you're going to be able to do it better. You're going to be able to do it more efficiently. You're going to know the steps. You're going to feel more confident. That's the way it works. Figure it out as you go. Okay, I want to talk briefly about, because, man, we've covered a lot of stuff today, haven't we? Like, I really hope this has been valuable for you, and there's plenty more we're going to cover in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th part of this series. I hope this has been valuable for you. I hope you got lots out of this, and a lot of your questions are getting answered as we go. I'll talk briefly about my 1st book versus my 13th book, and then we'll wrap up for today. You know, just to give people an example, and I think you're starting to get a sense, but my 1st book, I really had to figure out a lot of stuff along the way. Like, I'd gained a lot of practice in writing. I didn't have to start at square one. Still wasn't as good of a writer as I am now, but like good enough. I knew how to communicate my ideas. I didn't know how long each chapter should be. at some point, as I was getting closer to like, okay, I'm just determined to finish this thing. What is it going to take? What should I do? That's when I decided each chapter should be 5,000 words. But until then, no idea. Didn't have it all categorized. Didn't have it all organized. Didn't necessarily, like, I had to invent things to say in some ways, or I had to be repetitive just because I wanted to fill it with each chapter with 5,000 words. But when I had that kind of clarity, and the clarity came as I kept taking more steps towards what I was trying to create, that's important because you're going to figure it out as you go. That's when that decision was made. It's like, I want to finish this thing. I want to put it out into the world. I have a feeling it's going to do well, which it really did. What my best-selling book still today. I've written much better things. People are crazy for not checking them out. You're crazy. But like, my first book, I knew it was going to do well, and it did. How each chapter should be structured. What should it look like? I don't know. Do I need headings or subheadings? Should I use bullets? The answer is kind of like, yeah, use all of it, right? To create some variety, make it interesting, create some visual appeal, because that'll keep people reading. If you don't have that kind of stuff, then people, if it's just dense, huge paragraphs with no breaks and no spacing or whatever, like, people don't want to read that. It's just a wall of text, right? Maybe back in the day, people were into that in the 1800s or whatever. But here in the 1900s, in the 19th century, visual appeal became kind of important, didn't it? So I didn't know how each chapter should be structured. I basically was reading other books, and I looked at a lot of other books, and I was like, oh, I like that. Oh, I should take that. That's it. That's how it came together. Look at other books. Have other books. If you don't have a library of your own books, get books. Buy them. Put them on your shelf. Look at them. Learn a lot. Read them too. Every book you read is going to make you a better writer. Read more books, really. I didn't know where and how to distribute my book, like I said earlier. If I had known about CreateSpace, I would have gone with that right away. CreateSpace became Amazon KDP. They merged, but both existed at some point. It's like, why? But I think CreateSpace was its independent thing at one point, but it got purchased by Amazon and then basically became assimilated by Amazon. If I'd known about those, I would have went with those first, probably. But I think BookBaby was a good decision. I don't regret it. I think their distribution was awesome. And I think it probably helped me sell more books. And in fact, it still helps me sell more books. Interior layout, again, kind of just had to go into other books and look at them. And it's like, I think I know what fonts I want to use because this is what's on my website. So like, I have a background in web design, and I know what I'm doing in terms of selecting fonts and colors and things like that. Excuse me. But so I can take that and put it into the book. But there's other things about it. There's lots of things about interior layout, like where the pages go, subheadings, all that kind of stuff. So I had to figure that out. Graphics. I wanted to include some graphics in the book. They had weird specs. I think they told me. I think the instruction was something like they have to be over 299 DPI or something like this. So I kept including images that were 300 DPI, and it didn't like it. I'm like, well, it's 300, so it's over 299. What's going on here? And then I submitted the book with images that were exactly 299, and that worked. So it really, the instructions should have said, we need images that are exactly 299 DPI, but it said over 299 DPI. That was frustrating. As far as the cover for my first book goes, I looked at a lot of covers, and again, same thing. So buy some books, put them on your shelves, man. Like, seriously, and start looking at them. What do you see about covers? I ended up designing my own for my first book, and given, like, I had great photography, I think that's one of the reasons why it worked well. The photo itself kind of became iconic of an era, of sort of this indie rock era that I was representing. But I looked at a lot of them before deciding, like, this is what I want to do. And geez, putting together the paperback version of the book, it took me a year. I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe I didn't even know that was available. but I knew it would involve creating a cover, right? Front and back cover and a spine and all that kind of stuff. So I think I procrastinated, and then eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to have to learn and figure this out. And I'm going to have to maybe get a graphic designer. I think I asked a few people, it never worked out. So eventually I was just like, I guess I'll do it myself. And that's what I did. Now, versus my 13th book, which is what is pictured in the slide, Champion of Artistic Success. It's the latest release. What you're going to realize as I talk about this is just how laid back I am and was about this release. It's hilarious compared to my first book. First, all I did, I knew this was going to be a concept. I basically had the introduction written, so I knew how the framing of the book was going to be. But before there was anything, I set a pre-order date well in advance of its release. Now, I had a few books to complete on and to fulfill on along the way before this one was coming up, but this one was at the very tail end because I knew it would take a little more time in development because it was going to be my longest book, which it is. For the interior layout, I used pre-existing templates. I had 12 other books. I could just take those, right? And if I don't like the font, I can change the font. But basically everything is exactly as I want it to be. I've got Roman numerals for, the contents and disclaimer information and all that kind of stuff. And then I've got your standard numbering for each page, or like all that's already worked out. All I got to do is drop the content in and change a few things if I wanted to change it. Simple. As far as the content for my 13th book goes, I compiled blog posts. I wrote every day for 22 months at one point. I've had other publishing sprees too, like that. I don't think any that have been as long, but I published every day for 22 months. I had a lot of stuff, like most of it junk, but I'd written a few good things in there. So like it was enough for it to be, I think, over 100,000 words, this book. But all I did was compile blog posts, edit them, put them in a specific order. I wrote a unique intro and conclusion, of course. That's about it. I focused on the ebook first because deadlines, and I put off physical versions until later. I haven't put together physical versions yet. I could do that any day. It's not that big of a deal to me. This is not one of my winners. I'm testing other titles and on other books right now. This well, for whatever reason, I thought the commonality would be, okay, my first book had my picture on the front. Maybe if my next book had my picture on the front again, it would sell more. So far has not proven true. So this could be a stinker. This could be a loser. I'm okay with it. Testing. I had a great photograph ready to reuse. Well, at least I think it is. I think it's a pretty great photo of me. Jody took some great photos of me last February, I guess. And so I took advantage of that. Again, like I said, I'm testing to see whether a picture of me is beneficial on the cover. And I'm just generally not stressed about it. I'm putting it out into the world and letting it do what it does. So also haven't really put any marketing muscle into it. Maybe it'd sell a few more copies if I did, maybe not. But, it has no automatic, it doesn't have legs to stand on. And when you have a book that doesn't seem to have any legs, it's just going to be an uphill battle. So be prepared to that. Maybe just redirect your energies. Like I suggested earlier, you could change the title, you could change the cover, you could test different things, see what resonates. And ultimately, I moved away from a more aggressive publishing schedule, like I said earlier, which was multiple books per year. My record would be 4 in a year, down to 1 book per year because I spend more time promoting each book. So I hope this was helpful. In closing, let's talk about Indie Career Formula. It is the membership I've been dreaming of creating for a long time. And week by week, I'm getting closer and closer to my original vision. It's crazy. It is really, really taking shape. This is a place where creatives and creators can go to get the 5 C's, not 3, not 4. There's 5 C's: content, courses, community, coaching, and collaboration. In addition to the monthly print newsletter, the membership also includes a copy of one of my books, a members forum, exclusive audios. That archive is going to be huge when it's fully built out. There's going to be so many audios, members only podcasts. It's going to be crazy. And 4 of my courses, four of my courses, I really shouldn't be giving you this much at the price we're going at. You would probably expect this to cost hundreds, thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of dollars, but I've made it very accessible, even to independents. You can try it out for 30 days for just $19.95. Not $1,995, $19.95. What is that going to get you? 3 Starbucks drinks? 2? And after that, it's only $97 per month. Our print materials cost more than $19.95, so you can see that I'm taking all the risk here, just so you can get a taste of what's available inside. In this AI-dominated world, I'm focusing more on creation, connection, and collaboration than ever before, not less. I use AI as a tool, but I don't let it do my thinking for me, and this fact is reflected in the membership, as well as the way in which I approach it, as a means for personal growth and building character. Like I said last time, I should maybe change that. For enjoyment and profit. I'm doing it for enjoyment and profit. If you also want to learn how to use AI as a tool instead of letting it overtake your brain, well, you're in the right place at the right time. Today's presentation on self-publishing, and there's going to, like I said, there's going to be 3 more in this series, will be deleted after 30 days on Facebook. So the only place you'll be able to find it in the future, or at least in a very organized environment, is at Indie Career Formula. Where can you find all this? It's at indiecareerformula.com. That's I-N-D-I-E, not I-N-D-Y. Indie as an independent, E-N-D as an indie rock. That's I-N-D-I-E, careerformula.com. And if you have any other questions, I'm sure the website will answer them for you. So go to indiecareerformula.com now and check out this special offer. And by the way, would you like to be featured? Spark Infinity began as a place for creatives, by creatives, for creators, by creators, and it still is. And the thing we're interested in most is your story. We're more than happy to create presentations like I did today and share insights with you as we've done. But the thing that brings us the greatest joy is spotlighting you, giving you an opportunity to share your story. Whether it's an interview, and honestly, it doesn't even have to be a live interview. We could do a pre-recorded interview, a casual conversation, roundtable, or even a show and tell. We're happy to accommodate whatever format suits you best. So if you're ready to go live with us, drop a me in the chat or in the comments. We look forward to talking with you. Also, we still have a lot of people in the group who aren't entirely familiar with the way things work. I won't say a lot of people. There's some people in the group who aren't entirely familiar with the way things work here. I see some people posting their books, affiliate links, and other products or recommendations. I honestly don't want to see any of that until you've been on our show at least once. Please come on our show once. Then, okay, you share your videos, share your links, whatever. Until then, your community hasn't really had a chance to get to know you. It's not going to be effective. It's not going to be useful. We're just too many cooks in the kitchen. So what better way to showcase your work than be featured on our show for 30 to 60 minutes? Or seriously, you got something better? Let me know. I want to know about that thing. So again, we're all about spotlighting people in Spark Infinity. We really prefer to do it the right way, which we believe is the live streams and the interviews. So drop a me in the chat if you're ready to go live with us, and I'll be in touch. Thanks so much for joining us today. I know it's been a marathon session. Spark Infinity, I'll see you again soon.